I remember when radio was radio and you just got on the phone and you talked to somebody or whatever. Now it's like setting up Zoom shots and your lighting and your angle and your gallery mode. And I'm a mess over here. Who needs to see me?
I know. I just want to be able to roll out of my tour bus bunk and be able to get on the phone.
Right? I mean, that's the whole thing about radio. I got into it because nobody needed to see me. There's no visual, nobody needs to see this. Anyway, Bud, how are you? Mark Tremonti joining me. How are you, man?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Are you on the road now?
I'm in Nashville, yeah.
Are you still out with Seven Dust?
Yeah, we have I think 3 more shows. We end in Louder Than Life with Metallica in a few days.
Oh, nice. Very, very cool. So I saw you a couple weeks ago at Rocklahoma, and I watched from the side for a bit, but then I texted you after. I didn't pick up on it, but you said you had some problem there with your voice.
Oh man, you can rehearse as long as you want and be off tour for a year. Once you get that adrenaline going on your first show, you just scream at the crowd and blow your voice out. I blew it out, I don't know, 3 songs. So we got through it, but it just sucks when it's your first show. You want it to be great. The single's going to be videoed for the first time live, and man, my voice was just trashed, but it came back.
As obviously in Alter Bridge, and of course when you were doing Creed, you weren't the lead singer, even though in Alter Bridge you do the occasional lead vocal with that band. Obviously with Tremonti, that's all on you. You are the singer, and we've talked about that since the evolution of this band, how you feel about being a lead singer and how I think you've gotten way better at it. But is that a lot of pressure on you now to know that, like, not only do you have to worry about the heavy lifting on the guitar, but you're the front guy. You've got to deliver vocally. You got to take care of yourself maybe a little bit more with Tremonti, right?
It's a ton of pressure. Now I understand guys like Miles being all quiet and secluding themselves and going to bed at 9 o'clock. Yeah, it's definitely you got to sleep, you got to drink a lot of water, you got to eat right, you got to be responsible. And on top of singing, you got to be the guy talking to the crowd. Wasn't necessarily my thing at first. You get thrown to the wolves and you got to survive up there.
Yeah. So now can you understand LSD a little bit now, as lead singer's disease? Can you relate to it at all?
No, I don't understand the dark side of lead singer's disease. There's no excuse to be a. Are we allowed to cuss on this show?
Yes, sure.
There's no excuse to be an asshole anytime in life, So those singers with the LSD that are just assholes, screw them. But people that are quiet, and spend a lot of time on their own and isolate and prepare and be responsible, that's another thing. That's like Miles. Miles is, he's quiet because he doesn't want to talk all day long because he's saving it for the show.
Right. How do you feel you've evolved as a vocalist? Do you work at it? Do you since the first record, since the first Tremonti to Marching in Time, is it something that you work at? Have you taken lessons? Is it just come naturally as you've gotten more accustomed to it?
The most singing I think I've ever done in my life, practice-wise, was between these records. And it was because I became such a fan of big band stuff and Frank Sinatra and all that. I was like, I just loved kind of looking into that style of singing and picking it apart and seeing what I could do, because it's my vocal range is more of that vocal. Frank Sinatra's vocal range is my vocal range, so I could sing his stuff and use that to kind of practice my control, my vibrato, my pronunciation, and all that stuff. It doesn't really lend itself to heavy metal or rock, but it's definitely good for your overall control.
Is that new that you've gotten into that genre of music? Is that a new development?
Yeah, I've always been into it, but not as much as I am now. I'm reading all the books of all the big band guys. I'm watching all the movies. I'm buying I'm listening to Seriously Sinatra radio every time I'm in the car. I'm just I'm obsessed at the moment. So yeah, I'm deep down the rabbit hole at this point.
So are we going to get a Tremonti big band record at some point? You thinking?
You never know, man. You never know. Life's too short not to do everything you want to do eventually, but who knows?
The reason I bring that up is because I don't know if you know this. I know you are a big metal fan and a big thrash guy as well. So I don't know if you've seen this or this is on your radar, but the band Overkill is a band I love, and they're all friends because I grew up with those guys. And Dee Dee Verney, their bass player and their founding member, one of their co-founding members, he just launched a big band, like a Brian Setzer orchestra sort of thing, where he's singing wearing a shirt and tie. You'd never know it was him. And he's doing it on the side of Overkill. It couldn't be more different than Overkill. And it's amazing. He's like, he's really good at it. It's nothing you'd expect from him. So it's not that much of a stretch.
Yeah, well, it's where it came before rock and roll. So rock and roll must have somehow come from the big band stuff, you know. So it's,
Yeah.
Once you get into it, I think you realize how great it was. You know, as a kid growing up, I could have cared less about it, you know, but now I absolutely love it.
King Diamond, Frank Sinatra,
There you
Tremonti
go.
covers it all right there.
Could you imagine Frank Sinatra listening to a King Diamond record?
I could not. I could not. So Marching in Time comes out tomorrow. 5th, I can't believe 5 already Tremonti records, just nuts. Cause it seems like just yesterday we were talking about the first record. This one, was it a pandemic record? Did you make it in lockdown or was it done before? Tell me about making this one.
From the moment we finished Walk the Sky, I always hit the ground running with the next record. That's when I feel the most pressure, is when I immediately get into writing the next record. I feel the pressure until I have a handful of songs that I feel good about. So like I'm in that mode right now for the next Alter Bridge record, that recovering from the last record, starting to write the next one. So this record was written, some of the stuff, some of my ideas float around for years. Some of these ideas are 15 years old. So little pieces and bits, riffs or chorus ideas, but most of it came from the last couple of years.
You know, now the previous record, Dying Machine, was a concept record and it was an ambitious record. And I know there was a book and everything that tied in with that. Was this record a little bit more easy to make since you didn't go the heavy concept route?
Yeah, the concept thing was kind of hard and easy at the same time. It was hard because you knew what you had to do as far as the storyline went, but it was easy because you knew what you had to do. You know, you knew the task at hand. Sometimes it was tough, sometimes it was easier. But with this record, the thing that made this record easier in some respects was that I had all the time in the world to do it. I had Eric, my guitar player, come down and stay with me for 3 months to do demos. Usually you got 2 weeks, 3 weeks before you put enough demos together to bring into your producer for pre-production. We had our demos completely airtight, polished, lyrics done, melodies done, every guitar part done except for solos. You know, when we went in there, so we were way deep into songs that we would have never gotten a chance to look at on this record.
You know, you mentioned the last Alter Bridge album, Walk the Sky, and speaking of the pandemic, if my timing is right and I believe I'm right on this, you guys were derailed from touring, fully completing the touring for that record because of COVID, right? Weren't you guys, the brakes were put on you mid-tour for that cycle, right?
Yeah, it was pretty devastating for us. We had the best record debut ever for us, as far as sales go, and our concert ticket sales, everything were better than we've ever had. You know, we were just we're on a good trajectory, and then all of a sudden everything stopped. And you know, I kept on talking to my manager saying, let's just pretend that there's a pause, and when this pause is over with, we can start right where we left off and hit Walk the Sky, go on tour with it. And that was all good and dandy for the first 6 months. Then 9 months, a year rolls around, and you know, all the people that run our business are saying, you guys have to do a new record before you go on tour. The record's just too old. You know, all these other bands are going to be coming out with new records. You got to do the same thing. So we pretty much wasted a great opportunity for this band we didn't waste it, but you know, that the world, you know, it just bad luck for the band.
Yeah, because now that I'm thinking about it, I had you and Miles on from the Rainbow when we did the thing in the patio.
Yeah.
And it was that was the last to date, that was the last LA show I did publicly from the Rainbow. I was doing that every month. And I remember, because I saw you guys, you played the Will Turn the night before, which was a killer show, or whatever the order was. I think you did the show, then I saw you at the Will Turn, but whatever the case may be. But that was it for me too, as far as doing like remote in-person stuff with an audience. And Alter Bridge at the Will Turn was like the last live show I saw for at least a year. And it's crazy because coming out of that, I had no idea that was going to be the last time I was on the patio at the Rainbow. And I didn't know I wasn't going to see a rock show for like a year. So I mean, it was a great show, so it's a good final one to remember for the year, but still.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, everyone was caught off guard about that. I mean, obviously you just didn't know. I had Mike Portnoy on yesterday, and he was talking about, he had a band, Sons of Apollo. They were in Europe when things started going down, and they pulled out to try to get home. And he said they got all kinds of backlash from the press saying, what are you guys, crazy? You're canceling a tour for this? Just nobody could have foreseen where we were going and where we still are to some degree.
Oh, and that, I think just a couple of days after I saw you, we played Spokane, Washington. And when I got home the next day after that show, I got ill. I was sick for 12 days of the flu. And this was when the news just started popping off about how dangerous COVID was. And thank goodness I got it then. I think I had it because I'd never had the flu for 12 days as bad as I did. But it was before the whole panic set in of people dying from it. I think if that was in my head when that was going on for 12 days, I think I would have had a much, much worse mental time through that. So I think I had COVID early on, but I'm vaccinated and all that stuff now. So I feel better about it, but I just see the numbers going all over the place again. So I just worry about the just people getting out there and doing what they love again, because it's fingers crossed. We've had a healthy tour this whole tour so far. Nobody's gotten sick, and we've all followed strict rules and guidelines and stayed in our bubble, and things have worked out. So hopefully that works on the next tour as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you say Spokane, which of course is where Miles is from, but I remember the very first case in the US was actually in Washington State, because when I was flying back from LA after seeing you, sitting next to me on the plane was a really noted doctor, Dr. Agus, and we were talking, and he's like, "Oh, we're fine. There's no cases in the US." And then by the time we landed at Newark Airport, he turned to me and he goes, "We just had our first cases in Washington State." And I'm like, oh shit, so yeah, I mean, nobody, so you find touring, being out there now on this run so far so good, no issues, no setbacks. Because the one thing I see, Mark, is, and I'm vaxxed too, so I just go about my business the best I can within the protocols of wherever I'm at. But the thing I see is, and I'm sure you see this with the audience as well, you can have all the precautions you want in place, but when a rock show starts, and this is, better for better or worse, when a rock show starts, it just, that audience reverts back to how they're programmed to react to a rock show. And when you look out there, I'm sure you see that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you see, I forget what show it was where they had just a ton of people come out, and they said there was such little cause and effect of people being close to one another and catching the virus at this big festival. I think there was, I don't know, 60,000 people, and I think there was only like less than 100 cases or something after the fact. So they, that's bad, but in general, it's kind of promising that you put that many people together, and just don't go and, you can still be smart about it in a concert, but like I said, fingers crossed, man. Hopefully things just keep getting better so people can get back out there doing what they love. It's been way too long.
So did you actually record Marching in Time during the pandemic? Because I know you work with Elvis, and I know he's based in Orlando. You live in Orlando. So was it a really easy local thing for you guys to kind of bubble up and work in the studio? Is that when you did this record?
Yeah. We did it during COVID. Like I said, Eric came down and stayed with me for 3 months, and then we went in with Elvis. Elvis was very, he very strict too. No, there's no visitors in the studio. It's just us. But yeah, it's a great. It felt great to get something done while COVID was going on, and that's actually the best thing you can do during COVID is get in the studio and record a record. And Elvis said he has never been as busy. He said he worries that once people get back on tour, he's going to be sitting there doing nothing because everybody's already recorded their records. But I think he'll remain busy regardless.
Yeah. What is it about him exactly, Mark, for you guys that makes it such a good fit? It's pretty rare for an artist to consistently work with the same producer for so long. And it goes further than that. Like, not only does Elvis do your Tremonti records, but he does the Alter Bridge records. He does Miles solo records. So within your camp, he's really the guy. And that's Usually after a record or two, people bounce around. They want to work with other people, try different things. Why is it that you feel working with him is the right fit for whatever records you're doing with whatever bands?
Well, when you look at it and you see anybody that Elvis has worked with, like you look at Wolfie. Wolfie was in there working with Elvis on the Cauterize and Dust records. Wolfgang could have any producer in the world. He chooses Elvis. You have Miles introduce Slash to him. Slash uses Elvis. Anybody who sees the work that he does and the quality that he does now want to use him because he's just excellent at what he does. He works around the clock tirelessly. He never stops. And the best thing about Elvis is he brings the best performance out of you. Some people go to him for different reasons. I don't like using producers to help you write songs at all. It doesn't feel right to me. It feels dirty to have somebody write your song. So he knows with this camp, the best thing he can do is help us with choosing which songs make the record, getting the best performances possible out of us as individuals, making sure all the transitions are perfect, and his tones are second to none. You can do a taste test with Elvis versus all the other rock producers, a blindfold taste test. And we did that when we were choosing Elvis for the first time. Scott Phillips, he would play 5 songs from the batch of the 5 producers we wanted to use, and we picked the best sounding song. We did that maybe 4 times. He said, in every case, you chose Elvis. So his just the way it sounds, and first and foremost, is just one of the best sounding producers, engineers I've ever heard.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'm a stickler about that. And sonically, the records sound amazing. And they're loud and punchy, but without being what's called brick walled or overly compressed where you can't hear everything. And that to me is a really delicate balance to make a record sound powerful, but also where you can still hear everything. And that's something that it makes me nuts when you can't hear everything. It's too compressed, but you want it to be punchy. And he strikes that balance perfectly. His work is really incredible. You mentioned Wolf a second ago. We've talked about this before. You have a long history and friendship with Wolfgang Van Halen. He was in Tremonti. I saw him play live with you. And now he's out doing his own thing, opening for GNR. His record's doing real well. That's got to make you feel incredibly proud, I would think, to see that he's taken these steps and he's finally out there doing his own thing on his terms. I think it's awesome.
I think it's incredible. Yeah. I mean, I'm so happy for him, so proud of him. He's, when we met, he was still kind of he was kind of a kid, he was very young, and he's, likes flying around helicopters in the house and playing video games and just goofing around. But at the same time, he's this incredible musician who has to get out of the shadow of this massive legend who his father is, and how hard is that to do? So when he came out with this record, and it was so well accepted, and he got out there and he became that front man and got on tour with one of the biggest bands in the world and was successful at it, it just made me happy as hell, because it's a tall order. There's not a lot of musicians that are the sons of or daughters of famous other musicians that really can step out on their own. I've only seen it a few times.
And I give him a lot of credit for blazing his own path and not doing a Van Halen tribute and not doing that. I think, I know that some people feel like, they'd like to see that from him as far as the legacy, but I think he said to me more than once, he said, my dad always said to me, you do you. And it could have been a different, maybe easier path to just go out and be the successor, if you will. But the fact that he's doing it on his terms, making music that really doesn't sound like Van Halen, but is great in its own right, I think is a really admirable thing.
Absolutely. When we're sitting around, he's not listening to that style of music. Of course, he loves Van Halen, but he's not listening to that era, he's listening to more, he's a very progressive guy when it comes to music. That's one thing I was surprised when I heard his record was he could really show off and show you how incredible he is as a musician. But on this record, he made it about the song, which is great. But he definitely has a lot of cards up his sleeve when it comes to what he can still do that people haven't seen yet.
Yeah, the biggest thing that surprised me about the record was his voice. And I just saw him live for the first time with the band, and his voice, I always heard he could sing, but he can really sing. I mean, his voice is incredible.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That was something that was a really big surprise for me. So the record's out now. Record's out tomorrow. Marching in Time, the new album from Tremonti, is out tomorrow. Now I know it's an interesting convergence here because you've got Miles just about to start now, any day, if not already, on his tour for Ides of March. He's out doing dates. You're out now with Tremonti. Uh, I know Slash has a record coming, so there's going to be that whole thing coming soon, which of course includes Miles. I know you guys have worked on some Alter Bridge material and you want to get that up again. I mean, how do you? The manager's got to be like, I imagine what the iPhone calendar must look like, but what's like? Do you have it all kind of spaced out as to who's doing what when?
Yeah, as much as we can. You know, it's funny. Our manager, you know how crazy he must be right now. Work. He's also on tour playing bass with Miles on tour.
Right, right.
So he's
For
got.
those that
You
go see
know,
Miles, Tim, the bass player, is the manager of this whole thing.
yes,
And oh, by the way, he manages Wolfie and Seven Dust too. So
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
really it's really an undertaking.
And he doesn't drop the ball. You know, he gets everything done. You know, so he's you know, he's one of those managers that loves music and was a fan, and that's why he got into it. So that's how he survives. You know, he just loves what he does. So, but yeah, Miles is he's out on. He's already started his tour, and yeah, it's good that we've just timed things so we're doing things at the same time. So when we get back with Alter Bridge, we're both on the same schedule. The plan now is to get me and Miles together in January to piece together some songs that we've been working on, and then April and May, there's some time set aside with Elvis in the studio to get going on whatever we've written at that point. It's still scary to me because I'm still so fresh off of this record that seems very close to getting to the studio with Alter Bridge. So I've on all the time I have, I'm starting to write, but I'm still yet to come across stuff that I'm like, yes, it's time to get into the studio with it. I got a lot of work to do.
You know, I always wondered this too, and I asked Miles this in the past. So, have you ever heard anything that Miles has done for now his solo stuff or with Slash, or has he ever heard anything you've done with Tremonti and been like, son of a bitch, that should have been for Alter Bridge?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
have you ever had that?
all the time.
Have you ever sparred over that?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, just in a funny, you know, in a funny way, you know, like the title track, you know, the title track that he just dropped is just incredible. That could have been in a great Alter Bridge song. I got grief from Scott Phillips saying, you know, the title track of Marching in Time. He's like, dude, that's an Alter Bridge song. That's an absolute Alter Bridge song. And I told him, I'm like, listen, I know it's that kind of song, but it's a song about a father to his newborn daughter, about my daughter. I can't have Miles sing that. That's a personal song. He's like, I get it, man. But he just wants to get back on tour so bad, Scott Phillips. So he's ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know how much I love Alter Bridge as well, so I'm looking forward to whatever you do next with those guys. And one last thing, and I was talking about this off the air, and I know you know, you made a comment about it recently in another interview, but I was thinking about this the other day. You know, the thing that when you talk about Brian Scott and yourself, the thing that almost gets overlooked at times with all these other things going on is the fact that your first band with these guys, Creed, was a massive friggin' band. And I was saying the other day, Creed to me is almost kind of like the way people view Nickelback, in that there were detractors for the band that, as you well know, as anybody shit talked the band and said they didn't like the band. But oh yeah, you went on and sold millions of records and had a ton of hits and are now becoming, like, I think, a new generation's classic rock. So have you ever thought about that? And is there any side of you that might like to revisit at least doing shows with that band again?
You know, there's always people always kind of ask, you know, that a promoter asked this person asked that, would you guys consider doing this or that? And it's just never it's just been a lot of talk recently. There hasn't been any concrete offers and plans. If that happens, we're all, you know, we'll all listen, you know, we'll all look at whatever's presented. But it just has to make sense. You know, I've put way too much work into this solo record to go and say, all right, I'm going to pause for 3 months and go do Creed. Miles has done the same with his solo record, and we've got to prepare for this next Alter Bridge record. Alter Bridge is what we do next with Alter Bridge is very important. You know, this, like I said, we were doing, we were feeling really good about where we were, and then the carpet got pulled out from underneath us, and we've got to bounce back. we got to do it in a big way to keep that momentum going. So I don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize what we got going on. So it's got to make sense.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying anything imminent, but it's funny how time changes perception. I said this before you came on the air. A band like Limp Bizkit, a lot of people shit talk Limp Bizkit, made fun of Limp Bizkit. Limp Bizkit playing clubs. There was, oh, yeah, Limp Bizkit. Ha. Now Limp Bizkit's headlining festivals, or were headlining festivals in America and around the world. Time changes perception a lot. And I think people all of a sudden, like, yeah, that was my thing, whether it's, Creed or whatever. So that's out there. And I think that's just going to grow bigger and bigger depending upon when and if you'd ever decide to address it. Are you on decent terms with Scott Stapp these days? Are you guys cool with him, or where's that relationship?
I mean, we don't talk very often, but when we do talk, it's, we're nice to one another. We've definitely had our history of dark places in our relationship, but I think it's been 10 years since we spent a lot of time together on that last reunion. So I think we've both grown up a lot, more mature. I personally know that I'm not that kid anymore who harbors all this hatred inside and all this anger. I try to be more mature about it. I think he's the same way. So I think when you grow up and you're older and you have kids, you can kind of look at things differently. And I think I had said in a recent interview that I think it would be a shame to not at some point let people go and relive their childhood watching a band they grew up with, be selfish about not being able to do that. Because I think, we did have something special back then. It was a huge success, and there's a lot of people that would like to tap back into feeling young again and going to see the band that they listened to back in high school or wherever it was. So, who knows?
Yeah. Like I said, perception, time is an amazing way of changing perception. And sometimes a band being away is the greatest thing for their draw, because all of a sudden it's like, wow, I really kind of missed that and I want to come back. And last thing on this, and you would know this, when you look at, because you get accountings on publishing and airplay and all of that. So have you seen, like, with the Creed catalog, do you see a big spike, or do you see certain songs really spiking, and stuff that does really well? Like, do you keep an eye on that as to what's happening with airplay and streams on the songs you did with that band?
All I know it's very consistent. It's just over the years. I think this during COVID, it really went up a bit, but it's just been consistent over the years. It's never really dropped out. I think the Creed Greatest Hits record has always kind of been the top 100 record sales all the time. It's just one of those records that kind of floats around with, you see it alongside all the other records that are there forever. The Def Leppard Hysterias and the Black Album, the AC/DCs, and it's just great to see that you're floating around with those bands in that
big company. Yeah.
You're just always kind of in those record charts. But yeah, I don't keep a fine eye on that stuff. It's Creed has kind of been, not to get too personal with the business stuff, but we've kind of been unrecouped for, I don't get really Creed royalties anymore. So it's been a long time since that's happened.
Yeah, I know you guys got killed on that deal. That was well documented. Real quick on this, and I'm curious if you know this, what is the #1 streaming, and I guess it could probably be easily pulled up, but what's the #1 streaming Tremonti song, Alter Bridge song, and Creed song? Do you know?
I think Alter Bridge is Metalingus, maybe.
Really?
It's one of the top songs, because Adam, the Edge, used that as his intro music, and we had that whole, the wrestling community got behind it, and our fan base loves it. So we had kind of the double whammy there. But with Creed, I would probably say it's got to be Arms Wide Open or Higher, one of those two. It's funny though, years ago somebody said that the biggest YouTube views we had were One Last Breath, which surprised me at some point. With Tremonti, I think Dust is way up there on the list. But I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
But it's interesting, because when you talk about Tremonti, you think of it, and I think of it, as this new growing thing, which it still is, of course. But today we're talking about a 5th album coming out tomorrow, so it's a pretty big catalog there too. So there's a lot. You got an embarrassment of riches there, Mark Tremonti. So good on you, man.
Well, thank you. Good on you.
You can buy plenty more pinball machines, you know.
I'm dying. Next month, I got a new pinball machine coming, and it's good. I'm pretty excited about it.
Which one is it?
Godzilla.
All right. Did you get one of
Yeah.
these new Guns N' Roses ones they came out with?
No, but I was just hanging out with Eric Muner, the guy who designed it, 2 nights ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've seen, I know there's a couple different versions, but for people that don't know, Mark is a big pinball guy and has a collection, and I've always been a fan of pinball as well. I have a place at the Jersey Shore. I go in the arcades. I can't even find a pinball machine. Although in Vegas, where I have a second home now, they just opened a huge pinball museum. They moved it. It's now on the strip, and you can't miss it. And I'm gonna be there next week. I'm gonna go check it out. You been in there?
I have not. I've been to most of them, but I haven't been to that one for some reason. I'm usually too busy or something when I'm there. But I try to go. Like if I'm in Poland, I'll go to the Warsaw. Wherever the pinball museum is, wherever I can find them. With COVID going on this tour, I'm not allowed to do that, so it's been killing me. I was down the street from a pinball museum, and I forget what city we were in, but I couldn't go. It's just dangling, it's terrible.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I got to run. Thank you so much for the time. Safe travel. Say hi to the guys. Say hi to the Seven Dust guys. Everybody pick up the new Tremonti album. It's crushing. It's Marching in Time, and it's out tomorrow. Take care, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. You too.